Hey everyone, forgot where I was there. Hey everyone, a big welcome back to the Forge Ahead Show, episode 13. Unlucky for Steph, we've just discovered that. But a very warm welcome to the Forge Ahead Show. And if you're new here, this is where we get the people that have been from adversity to excitement onto the show to showcase their journey, their inspiration, their words of wisdom that they've picked up along the way. Also, I just get decent people, basically, people that I've met along my journey, people that I've spoken alongside, people that I've networked with, and actually just bring you some really interesting people. And today is absolutely no exception to that. So before we kick on, my name is Nick Elston. I'm an inspirational speaker on the lived experience of mental health. What does that actually mean? That actually means that lived experience to me is the vehicle that takes people and organizations from the problem of mental health to the solution, but I ain't the solution. I sell engagement. That's basically what I do. I also work as a speaking coach focusing on emotional storytelling. And if you look at my taste in country music, it's about storytelling. My taste in guests is about storytelling. So there's a whole theme running through my life, and I love that right now. Anyway, so that's me. So if you're new, welcome along. Thank you very much, and do hit subscribe. Today's guest is the man, the legend. It's Mr. Steph Thomas. Big round of applause. And actually my first guest where I've gone al fresco, so this could be like the biggest car crash since Joe Exotic. You just never know.
Oh, it's really difficult to know where to put yourself today. I'm sat inside because it's definitely cooler here than it is in our garden, but only just.
Yeah.
So I get it completely.
And this line of sun is actually getting closer to my head already. So I may start melting as it reaches this point onwards. So the cat may start going. But anyway, big welcome, Steph. Really nice to see you again, my friend.
Yeah, this is lovely. Thank you so much for inviting me on. I'm flattered. I always struggle with the adversity thing. I know we'll talk about it in a minute, because it's, you know, compared to what other people are going through, I haven't really. But I know that's part of what I'm here to talk about and what I have been through and so on. So we'll come to that. But no, I'm delighted to be here.
Good, and it's really good to have you along. So I met Steph through For Networking, an organisation that we both currently belong to and also belong to for a long time. And Steph, actually, when I first met him, was an estate agent. So this is interesting, who had just moved into marketing, I believe. It's all rattling around in here somewhere now. It's coming out. I really should have thought about this.
I've started talking about this a load more recently. From 1983 until 1987, or 1988, I guess, I worked in firstly shoe shops and then Habitat. Actually, I worked, but in retail. And then from 1988 until 2007, I was in estate agency. And then I had the sort of big reinvention in 2007 when I joined For Networking as well and started this networking journey when I was actually running a little magazine at first. Then I realised that the bit that you could be paid for in running a magazine was the writing. So I was doing that, and then that sort of evolved into marketing, and then that evolved into what I'm doing now. So you're absolutely right. Estate agency was 20 years of my life, man and boy.
That's amazing. For Networking's got a lot to answer for, I must admit. If you look back what's happened over that time, breakdowns and everything else, but it's all good. I mean, it's been a fantastic vehicle for that change. And if I look at the people that are closest to me now, Mark Brimson, we both know. If I look at my closest friends, they've all come from For Networking. So actually, it's really nice to have you on because you're kind of part of that kind of journey that if we didn't do that, and actually what is usually badged as like business networking, that actually my whole personal landscape would be different. I mean, definitely now, even professionally now, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now without that and the encouragement and the enthusiasm. And it's amazing to see that somebody as passionate as you about business networking has now gone on to do so many great things. And what I've neglected to say so far, not only are you a fantastic networker, but also you're a speaker in your own right professionally. You are also an author. You do lots of things. You run events around networking. So what do you think is kind of like maybe your biggest tips on how to network effectively? I know you wrote a book on this, so we're going to summarize it to 3 points. The link's in the bio. For the people listening to this, he just held up a book. That doesn't come across well on audio.
Of course, it doesn't work. So I will put podcast.
Business Networking for Dummies by Stefan Thomas, by Wiley. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
right.
and the link is in the bio. There you go. It's over to you.
Do you know what? The world's really changing. I've been doing some stuff recently for organisations in other countries, and I'm writing a book called Ditch the Elevator Pitch, because I genuinely believe that the world of networking and the world of sales is hugely changing. The biggest tip that I would give to people about networking is, and this took me until age 48 to really get my head round. So don't beat yourself up, people, if you're not getting your own head around it. But my biggest tip is to be yourself and allow the right people to get to know you, the right people to be drawn to you. So often, because we wrap this networking word around everything, we think that we've got to be something different, be someone different when we're out at networking events, that somehow we've got to speak in a different way. And I'm increasingly drawn to the people who are themselves and who I'm going to like. And that's something that would be the biggest tip which I would give to people. Relax into being yourself rather than trying to be the sort of networking, and I'm doing inverted commas here, rabbit ears, rather than trying to be the networking version of you. That would be by far the hugest tip that I would give to people right now.
Thank you, Matt. I love that as well. And I think it kind of falls in nicely with, I do a piece on like vulnerability to bulletproof, actually, that the more we show of ourselves, the more actually we have that depth of relationship with other people almost instantly, because it builds that trust. And we've all been at those kind of events where you have somebody putting that kind of mask on, or the kind of the glitzy, polished version of themselves. And actually, we know it's really hard to buy into those people. It could be the people that go for the pitch straight away. It could be. So yeah, fantastic advice. Thank you. And you do walk the talk. So you mentioned right at the beginning about actually the comparison of your experiences, your vulnerabilities, your adversities, against other people's. It's something I've really been interested in for a long time, is that, especially around mental health, I think that there's a real challenge with that we have that conditioning where we compare our challenges against somebody else's. Who are we to worry about this when actually somebody's got all of this kind of crap going on, when actually if something causes us pain and frustration, absolutely we've got every single right to own that and to kind of resolve that for ourselves. I did a talk recently for NHS frontline staff, but then a couple of weeks later to an organisation of elderly people who've been locked in for most of the year. Actually, their challenges are either end of the extreme, but absolutely achieving the same kind of challenges. So you mentioned kind of your adversities. You mentioned kind of vulnerability. We've just been talking about that. Talk to me a little bit about your experiences, if that's okay.
Yeah, when I say I don't deserve it, I had a really sort of happy, comfortable, middle class, Middle England childhood. I enjoyed school. I know not everyone enjoys school. I loved school, and sort of had everything going for me. And so when I was diagnosed with depression, which was 97, so I'm sure I'd probably been having some symptoms before that. I remember people around me saying, why? That you've got all of this, you've got a nice job, you've got a company car, and so what, why? And you end up feeling like, oh, they're right. That's how I felt. They're right. Of course I shouldn't be. There are people who can't afford to put food on the table, like really. And there are people who are homeless. And so I don't deserve to have any mental health issues. And that messed with my head to the extent that in June 2018, I ended up in mental hospital and did 5 days, which I learned a lot about myself in those 5 days. And I very much, on the one hand, wished that I'd never been in there, because I'm afraid it was a dreadful experience. I'm not going to, for me, it was a terrible thing. I'm not going to dress that up at all. Rebuilding myself since then, and actually 2 years down the line starting to talk about it, because I started to talk openly about it around March this year, actually, around the time of my birthday. And then, I popped a post on Facebook telling people about it. And I think I didn't ever do it strategically. I did it to get it out of the way so that people knew that bit about me.
Mm.
But here's the really interesting thing. A lot of people have become closer to me because all that time, 97 through to 2018, I was pretending that everything was okay. And, logically, I wrote 3 books. I was started to be asked to speak on stage. I built this huge network of people in multiple countries who know my work. And everyone else thought I was successful except for me. But when I appeared in public, I was constantly putting on that veneer, that suit of armour, that I was this person. And I've got a feeling that messed me up more than a lot of things. The constant exhaustion of pretending to be okay when actually life was falling apart. And life, I made a series of dreadful decisions in my personal life, in my business and financial life over that time. And yet, in the 2 years since then, I don't like the word authentic because I think it's used too often, but I've rebuilt myself to be a much more authentic version of me and comfortable with the fact that some people will be watching or listening to this and thinking, oh, wow, he ended up in mental hospital. I'm not going to do business with him. But I think a lot more people, and this is the feedback that I'm getting, are coming to me and saying, thank you, because privately they've been in that situation or nearly in that situation. And the number of blokes, Nick, putting you and me as blokes, I think blokes is a better description than men. The number of blokes who've come at me in the last few months to say, I thought it was just me, is really telling to me that we have some of the problems that you know much more about than me, that we really do have that issue where a load of blokes are feeling not unworthy of their success, but unworthy of any vulnerability, that they shouldn't feel depressed or unhappy sometimes. And that, I think, is quite a challenge. I really do.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that, mate. I mean, like I said, it's again, it's that kind of vulnerability to bulletproof thing, and you can tell that you have that strength and resilience. Now, I first heard you speak about this in a public forum towards the start of the year, and again at a networking event, and it shocked me really, because like I said, you don't see what's going on behind the scenes, and especially for people that you don't see on a hugely regular basis, it's just very easy to assume that when you're not around, that they're just exactly as they were before. And it's difficult. And I think you mentioned the men element as well. And I get exactly what you're saying, that people will men especially, will kind of sidle up or do the open questions are very few and far between from men when we talk about mental health. And I think for me, we're in our 40s. We've been brought up with that man up, stiff upper lip brigade. We don't talk about our crap, and I think that's the challenge. That's the first layer of conditioning that we struggle to break down, because actually the second part of that, and when I deliver talks in different parts of the world, they don't have this problem, is that in the UK we consider self-care as selfish. So if we take some time to ourselves, we feel guilty. We feel like we should be explaining that to other people, but to use that massively overused airplane adage, that if we don't put our oxygen mask on first, that we cannot be strong enough to help other people. And I think it's Brad that says, like, kind of, you can only run for so long before you stop. And I think it's absolutely true. And then people wonder why again, one of the most common kind of questions I get asked is that is kind of mental health challenges just, why is that happening now? It's always happened. It's just that suddenly people feel a lot more comfortable to talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
And I always feel really humbled when people like yourself decide to share something that's so raw, I guess, to a lot of people.
But here's the thing, right? You probably do know. You might not remember, but I have a medical condition called ulcerative colitis. I've had ulcerative colitis since I was in my mid-20s, and I can talk openly about that. And people say, oh yeah, and people recommend you something, and I've got ulcerative colitis, and that's just a thing, and that's a thing about me, and I broke my ankle in 2013, and that's a thing about me as well. And they're both medical things about me, which I have no hesitation in talking about. But when I was in mental hospital, I lied to everyone about why I was away for 5 days, and that shouldn't be the case.
No.
I actually didn't lie. I'm very useful with language, so I told the absolute truth. I said to people, I'm in hospital. You know I have ulcerative colitis. Both the first statement and the second question were completely true.
Yeah.
You know, so I was careful not to lie. But for whatever reason, even then, and I'll tell you what it is. When I started years ago, I mentioned just a few times that I'd been diagnosed with depression in the past, and even publicly on Twitter, because it hurt so much. I remember the conversation. Someone told me that I shouldn't be, because there were people actually in her country of origin who were much poorer than me, who couldn't afford to eat, and therefore I should look at them and not be depressed. And that then knocked me back for years. I didn't talk about it for years after that.
Comparison's a killer, and I see a lot of people go down that route, but it's not that. It's the relevance. It's the relevance to you. It's your perspective and how it affects you. And I'm really pleased that you decide to be so open and honest through social media. A lot of people see it as kind of like death by LinkedIn. I remember when I first went self-employed, going back a few years now, that I was working for Tesco, delivering groceries 36 hours a week, as well as trying to do my own thing at the same time. And by embracing it, and actually I posted a video which somebody actually messaged me saying, "You've just committed LinkedIn suicide," of posting the video with my Tesco high-vis gear set on a Sunday morning saying, "This is what I'm doing to keep the dream alive." And that honesty, I think that unfortunately it's rare. So actually when you do post what you do with your audience, it will trigger some people that can't find the courage or conviction or confidence in themselves to be as open. I know, again, it's massively overused kind of quote, but it's all about the other person. It's all about who's engaging, not necessarily about you. You're just telling it as it is. And actually, social media is a really interesting one because, and I wanted to bring this up with you. I took the decision about 5 or 6 weeks ago now to leave Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I found that over lockdown, I'd built a really strong kind of daily self-care routine. I'll come on to that shortly because I want to find out about yours. And then, so I'd feel happy and strong, and then I'll get back, open the laptop and start scrolling and feel like shite within minutes. And I think there was for the start of that lockdown period, there was a groundswell of compassion. Everybody seemed to really want to help each other. And then it just changed. And I think there's a lot of toxicity comes through. And we've always had kind of like trolls and that kind of stuff. But there are some big world issues. Obviously, you've got the bad politics, you've got racism, you've got lots of different things going on. And I just think it changed things enough for me to actually think, actually, I'm done. There's an educated risk in that, as you know, with business and events and that kind of stuff. There's an educated risk. But for me, it was when you've been through a mental health challenge before, of whatever description, that you become very self-aware and you get the courage to make those decisions and those calls very, very quickly. What's your experience been of social media, and how are you resilient against negativity? How are you resilient against kind of trolls? Because I know the more that you pop your head up above the parapet, the more you're probably going to get shot at.
Yeah, I mean, I've blocked some of them. I've got trolls. Talked about this last week on stage. You know, I think the reality is I've got one troll who pops up under different guises and registers on LinkedIn under different accounts is the reality.
Wow.
But I also think, you know, there's one thing I think about that. Firstly, if someone's putting their time and energy into doing that and trolling me, and I'm concentrating on my own business and my own life, then I'm still winning. Do you know what? I've got much better at this in the last couple of years. Genuinely, I have my 3 sons. I have my partner, Sharon. I've got my family, my parents, and my 4 sisters. You know, outside of that, like, with enormous respect, you know, you and me are friends. If you picked up the phone and said, "Steph, I think you're getting this wrong," I would listen to you. But outside of that, learning to genuinely not care about other people's opinions. I sadly, I think that Brexit and masks have divided the country in ways that I've genuinely sad about seeing and haven't seen before in my lifetime. You know, people of left-leaning persuasion, people of right-leaning persuasions were still able to have reasonable discussions. And I get completely what you're saying. Facebook has become toxic in that respect. But again, for me, it's how I choose to react to it. I try to insulate myself. I spend a lot of time on social media, mainly because I enjoy it. I enjoy the fun that I still get, particularly on Facebook, and the education that I get on LinkedIn. I guess that's broadly how it breaks down. I think in terms of insulating myself from it, I just do. I know that's not a particularly great description for someone.
No, I get it. But do you find you get so? I mean, I've been quite open about 4 or 5 weeks ago. I had a period where I was starting to struggle again, and we'll talk about kind of how I've come back from that in a second. But in terms of that point, because other stuff was triggering, that actually my kind of hypersensitivity increased. So I think there was like a perfect storm of events where actually I felt completely overwhelmed, disconnected. Do you find that if you are kind of having one of those days where you're just not feeling it, whatever you want to call that thing, that do you find your sensitivity increases, or actually do you find that your stubbornness increases?
Yeah, my sensitivity increases by a country mile, and ask Sharon. You know, it definitely does, and that's not a good thing. I genuinely, I let a lot of it wash over me. For me, it's different for each of us. There's no one size fits all in this. For me, my Facebook following and my LinkedIn following are particularly important to me. So a decision that I made is that, you know, I would rather build a business which benefits me and ultimately my sons, rather than let people who are prepared to register different accounts just so they can, you know, rather than letting them prevent me from doing that. And then all of the other stuff, the political discussion, I engage with people, and if they don't want to be engaged with, I either unfollow or unfriend them, depending on how racist, sexist, or otherwise they're being. I've stopped trying to educate people on Facebook. I think we all go through that education where we think, you know, there's a point in arguing with other people. There isn't. Yeah. So I stopped doing that years ago.
We try and correct the internet. The internet is wrong. We must correct it.
Yeah, exactly that. Exactly. You know, what would you come to bed, darling? I'm too busy. I'm arguing with someone on the internet.
Yeah. Mate, I mean, that's it. To be honest, that's the other thing. It's the fact that I literally couldn't sit for 5 minutes without scrolling. And I think so. There's definitely an element of that I could have increased the willpower as opposed to cut it cold. But yeah, actually,
but that's the thing. We've each got to do what's right for us, you know.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
And make the decisions which sometimes not everyone will understand, because they're the decisions which are going to make us happy. And actually, you know, with everything else that's going on, if we're not making decisions that will make us happy, which might be short term, might be long term, we might have to do some rubbish stuff right now to build the business that we want to build to make us happy, so on. But if we're not moving towards that place of happiness, then what are we moving towards? And that is my genuine goal and intention these days, to move towards constantly stuff that makes me happy, and to move away from, sometimes urgently, stuff that's making me unhappy, because why would you stick with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And from a professional perspective, there's certain elements that I do miss. I mean, LinkedIn's always been strong, and it's still a place. But actually, interestingly, rightly or wrongly, I still think it's a platform that I can consider more, not exclusively, but more 9 to 5 than any of the other kind of platforms. Because, but so in terms of professionally, then, so I know you focus a lot on helping people to engage their networking and mixing it with their online stuff. Is there something like a tip you can give the audience on how to do that effectively? So you've been to a networking meeting, whether it be like online or offline. How do you then connect that to your social media stuff?
The biggest tip I could give is to understand that the networking continues, and that it continues online. So some people post a lot, and that's fine. and some people don't post very often, and every gradation in between that. The opportunity is to continue to network, with the people who do post a lot. We can hop onto their coattails. We can go and comment and engage on their threads and their posts, and I do a lot of that. It's almost as if when the networking event is finished, the networking then just moves to a different place. And in between the actual networking events, then we do have LinkedIn and Facebook. And so I actively connect and then engage. You and I, at some point in the dim and distant past, when my beard was still brown, and you might not even have had a beard at the time.
I never had one.
You didn't have a beard. But you and I engaged after we met. We met at a networking event somewhere, then we found each other on Facebook, LinkedIn, the For Networking Forum back in the day, and we engaged. And here we are now doing a podcast together. And for me, that sort of thing is just beautiful because where else in another 5 years' time, what will we be doing? But the fact that we've started that conversation at a networking event, and then we've both of us have put effort into keeping this conversation, this relationship going. That's really where the magic happens. Who knows, right? You asked me to appear on your podcast, which I'm really happy to do. Who knows that someone listening to this podcast now or watching it on YouTube might decide they want to connect with me, and they connect with me, and we do something, and somewhere down the line one of their connections wants to hire me for something. Who knows where that may go? It is completely
some Matrix stuff going on here. Steph, you just blown my mind, literally.
From knowing Scott Hyder, who I know we both know, from sitting in a motorway service station with Scott Hyder at some point, I ended up doing work for Lloyds Bank. Amazing. And there's a direct so from joining For Networking, which then left me to meet Scott Hyder and deciding to meet the guy because I liked him, and then ultimately he invited me into a room where there was someone from Lloyds Bank, and that sort of thing I think is hugely underestimated by people.
Really is. And actually, like you said, it's a great example. It's a perfect example of that kind of reach as well. Like you said, we notice the sun's now coming over and getting increasingly hot as we go on. So for the people watching this on YouTube, I start to sweat. I do apologise. No one wants to see a fat guy sweat, but sorry, it's fine. I'm really enjoying this. So in terms of, that's brilliant. Thank you very much for that. So I guess that the other thing I wanted to go into was having experienced kind of both mental illness and mental health, as you have as well. How do you kind of ensure that you go again strong every day, or maybe not every day, but you know what I mean? How do you kind of keep that resilience high? Things that I've kind of recently discovered over the past kind of 4 or 5 weeks to come back from that kind of point was that to meditation. I've got into meditation every morning. I've got into things like I'll walk a minimum 5 miles every morning. The affirmations, things like basically a lot of things that I've kind of known around for a long time, but actually what I found is those marginal gains, isn't it? With daily incremental consistent changes, even over a short 4 or 5 week period, it's changed my life around completely. So that's there to stay. And like today, when it was absolutely hot from the minute I got up at 6 o'clock and I wasn't really feeling it, I still did it and I felt great again afterwards. What do you do? What's your kind of things that you make sure that you keep your energy high?
I'm naturally energetic and positive, so I've got that as an advantage. I naturally see the world in a positive way. I think in the last couple of years, rather than trying to stay energetic, positive, resilient, I've got better at acknowledging my signs, my signals when that's not happening, and now actually being ruthlessly honest about that. So occasionally, like in the last couple of months, I might have cancelled a phone call with someone because we're living through surreal times. This is
massively.
We're recording this the middle of August 2020. We're living in ridiculously surreal times. If that's got to me or the stuff that's happened around that, I've cancelled a phone call because actually I wouldn't be any good to someone that day. It would be far better. So that sort of thing, I've got better at not fighting it, being honest about it. I was just fiddling with my phone then to hold this up the screen. This is what I've got much better at, if you can see that. Knocking out a
Nice.
hold. So I had a big day last Thursday, and I've got much better at acknowledging now. If I'm speaking on stage, which I was doing last Thursday, then the next day I'm going to have a slump.
Yeah.
So instead of fighting against that, I booked the next day out. That's the and we stayed in a hotel where I've been speaking. We had a very slow drive home and went out for lunch that day, and did not force myself to do any commercial, any work related activity that day. Now I'm in the very lucky position now where I run my own business. I can make those decisions. I appreciate not everyone is, but that's how I deal with it, by being honest about it these days.
That's brilliant. I think that proactive recovery angle is really important. Yeah, I love that. It's really good. And I know, obviously, like you say, you do stage speaking as well. Kind of, what's your kind of pre-match warm up before you speak?
I'm very quiet. I get it's what you get on stage is still me, but it's a slightly different, bigger version of me, I guess. And so I'm very quiet before I go up. I like to retreat into my own space. I do take myself off and do a little grounding technique, just half an hour, 20 minutes or so before I go on stage. I try and keep cool, which, no matter what time of year it is, very often those environments are quite hot. I have, there's practical stuff. I don't get changed until about half an hour before I'm due on stage. But yeah, I have a little grounding routine, and I keep myself to myself. Something that I do really practically is I don't watch the speakers who are on before me.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. I've got all of my own issues going on in here, and I do not want to be thinking, which will happen to me. I don't want to be thinking, bloody hell, he's good. I'm never going to match up to that. I have to keep myself completely away from it, because other speakers are good, and I don't want to be there thinking, oh, God, they're good. I'm never going to be as good as them. I don't want those thoughts creeping in before I go on stage. So I keep myself away from watching what's going on before me if I possibly can.
Yeah, I love that. That's really good. Yeah, thank you. I think that must have been nice to get out to a real kind of place again. I've not done that. Well, not in a professional capacity. I've been myself and my wife and my dog have been going to the coast path on the southwest. Like you said, actually every week in a weekday to give that extra kind of recovery time. But just a change of scenery is good. But it must have been great just to kind of be back on a physical stage again.
Even without an audience, which
even without an
was.
audience, yeah. I saw the images from that, actually. That must have been really quite, again, surreal is probably the best word, to be fair.
It certainly, it takes a lot of the sort of experience that you and I have got speaking at hundreds of networking events to be able to speak in what was basically an empty warehouse, but with a stage and cameras set up in it, and the cameras being worked and so on. Everyone else, there were 6 people, I think, in the warehouse at the same time as me, and they all had a job to do. They weren't there to watch me speak. And, for example, there was a photographer, the wonderful Vicky Head, wandering around in front of the stage. But it took the sort of experience that you and I have got, loads and loads of speaking, to be able to do that to a almost completely empty room, and keep up the same sort of energy as I would if I had a room full of people. There was an audience. They were virtual. They were all watching on Zoom from wherever they were. But as you can imagine, that's a very different experience to being able to see and ride with the responses that you're getting from the audience.
Exactly, yeah. I think that's the one thing that I do miss about kind of the online delivery is being able to riff with your own content. Because like you said, when stuff's landing, you know when stuff isn't, and you can shake it up. And like you said, that only comes from knowing your stuff. So we were chatting just before I hit record about kind of the difference between delivering online and actually how everybody's kit is starting to build up in the background. People have got more books in the background to make themselves look a bit more clever. But actually, you wrote your own, so you're kind of nailed that front.
I've not done very well today, actually. So I've got a little. If I can, that's better.
There we go.
I've got a little mini banner in the back of the room. That should have been there all the time.
So, I mean, given the fact that we still don't know when the next time we can deliver to a conference hall or to a boardroom or whatever that may be, we still don't know when that's going to be. Given the fact that online could be I know it's an overused term, but a new norm for quite a while. What kind of what's your biggest tip for delivering online as a speaker?
There's a number of things. I mean, there's the really obvious ones. For example, to make sure that I am talking to the little camera in the corner of the screen there, rather than talking to you, because if I get eye contact with you, then I'm looking away from the audience. Making sure that as best as possible that you're properly lit, and that the environment is becoming. I choose not to use a green screen. That's a personal choice. It also means that I have to keep all of this sort of pretty tidy, make sure there's, it's not too untidy around me. It does require a different energy to be able to go for 25 minutes in some cases, 45 minutes in other cases, without much audience reaction. Requires you to put all of the energy into it. It doesn't matter what sort of speaker you are. People buy energy. People want a bit of energy, and if people are going to sit in their hot office watching you for 45 minutes, you need to keep them engaged. It does need a bit more energy than it did in real life. I've seen some people who were perfectly good speakers in real life who it's just not working for online. Because they're just not able to keep up the energy and the engagement. There are a ton of practical things. You do need a half decent camera. You do need to make sure that your sound's okay. A decent internet connection, a decent laptop or device, because some of them just can't cope with rendering that much video all the time. There's all of the practical stuff, but ultimately the content is the thing, making sure that you're energetic in the right way and you've got engaging content that will keep people listening. I don't think there's anything new in that, really.
No, I think that's bang on. I think the engagement part is crucial. The training days that I deliver it runs from 10 till 4, which even in person is quite a full-on kind of day. But when it's delivered online in Zoom, that just rejigged the engagement, so nobody was left for more than 20 minutes without doing something, without doing a speaking exercise, that kind of stuff. And actually, it does go by quite quickly, so it can be done. But again, I think it comes back to the fact that we have years of experience beforehand of knowing how to engage an audience, of whether it's as a trainer or whether it's a coach or as a speaker, and that's how you can roll it out. And speaking about training, tell us about the networking retreat.
Thank you for giving me the chance to talk about it. I mean, the networking retreat has evolved. It started off as a 2-day training course here in Oxfordshire. I genuinely did have people from all over the country, Scotland and Wales as well, coming down here to work with me. The networking retreat now happens online. It happens virtually, as you can imagine. It's evolved a little bit because the networking retreat is also now an app. So there's a networking retreat app. There it is.
Very cool.
Where there's a forum. There's people chatting in there. Plus, I put networking advice in there every day. So and that's completely free. The networking retreat app. And I'll tell you the reason that I've done it, and it actually links in well to our conversation. Because people can go on there without going on Facebook. People can go on there, get networking advice and network, but it's a place of work. There's no noise on there. There's no chat. We're chatting about business stuff, but there's nothing else on there, because I wanted to think that if someone wanted to spend, say, half an hour a day, 20 minutes a day, they can go in there, get their networking questions answered, network and make connections with some other people. We've got a very big audience in there now. And lots of people said to me at the time, but we've got Facebook. But in this conversation, you said to me that you found Facebook distracting and toxic and so on. And whilst I enjoy Facebook, I also like the fact that on the networking retreat, I can go on the app and not suddenly find myself 7 hours later
down the rabbit hole,
looking through the videos of my sister's wedding a year ago. That's or my memories. Look what I was doing 11 years ago. That's that's one of the things that I love about the app. So the networking retreat, I train people on networking skills, but I also have the completely free app. And people just have to search the networking retreat on the app stores, and they will find it there and can download it for free.
Amazing. I love that. And actually, it's something that from leaving Facebook, I had to leave a couple of groups I belong to by default because I just the choice was stronger than the group kind of thing in that sense. So when I looked around at kind of neutral platforms to host these kind of things, actually there's not a lot of options. So I think an app's an amazing way of doing it, and I'll be downloading it as soon as we finish. And the link will be in the bio. So if anybody wants to join it, please do. I'll be joining myself. So
you can put video in there.
Cool.
So if you wanted to upload this video and link to the podcast in there, by all means do so, Nick. That'd
cool.
be terrific.
Amazing. See, real life networking going on right now. So, okay, so the sun is now mostly over me. I am looking to wrap this up now before I melt into a pool of
perfect
bloke.
timing for me too.
So, right, okay. So, Steph Thomas, I've just been made the MC of O2 Arena. Congratulate me, first and foremost. 20,000 people have paid their hard-earned money to come and see you talk and deliver your awesomeness. What's your walk-on music?
Ace of Spades by Motorhead, and
Yes.
I know you knew that.
Yes.
I've been fortunate enough to have that on a few occasions as well, where I've walked on stage in the UK. I've done an audience of 2,500 people.
Amazing.
I would dearly love to do the O2. I mean, that is a bucket list thing for me. There's been a few conferences that I've seen have happened at the O2. I would dearly love to be there, and it is 20,000 people when it's full in there, so I would absolutely
nice. And I've seen you with Dry Ice as well. It's proper showbiz. It's cool, isn't it? Really good.
Dry Ice, and that's just me being silly. It's just, I was never the rock star that I really wanted to be. So now at age 50, I get to play with that a little bit and have Dry Ice come on stage.
See, you say that, I get that. I'm waving a dog shoe. This is bad parenting. For when she barks, I just lob this and she goes and eat it. Anyway, now I finished waving a dog chew at you. I do apologise, Steph. Actually, you're right. It's that I always wanted to be a country singer, and actually, the reason why I've actually found kind of my place in the world now is because I'm getting the job of being a singer. I deliver to audiences. We go and see different venues, but without the job of singing, which is a relief for me and the world in its entirety. My mum says I can sing, but so does everyone on Britain's Got Talent.
Absolutely.
So I get that. I really do tune in. So you still get the same buzz of delivering something to an audience. Yeah, absolutely get that. Great, and I'm sure, like I said, that there's events that I speak at. I won't name them here, just in case it doesn't go that way. That I would happily introduce you to. I think you'd be fantastic for them people that have conferences like Excel and lots of different places. So let's have a chat away from here, definitely. Right, parting wisdom from Stefan Thomas. Leave us with some pearls of wisdom for the day, the week, the year. Who knows?
Yeah, right now, it's never too late to start building your network. And I think, with the news that we've seen on the telly this morning, with the we're recording this on August the 12th, with the various news about the numbers of redundancies and unemployed. It's never too late, and it's never too early to start building your network. Even if you've got what you think is a really secure job right now, build your network. It's good for you and it's good for your employer. Build your part on LinkedIn. There's no downside in doing that at all. And actually, most of us are going to get through this unscathed. Most of us are going to do all right. For all of the doom and the gloom on telly, most of what you're worrying about isn't ever going to happen. That would be my biggest piece of advice to anyone.
Amazing. I love that. And actually, I think about now, most of my network was built for other people. They were built, so even when I didn't know what the end was, i.e. being self-employed at all. So it's a lot of power in this. And Steph, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you so much for sharing your life. That was really, really cool. Really enjoyed that. So big round of applause for Steph. I love clapping, by the way. It keeps the energy up. Big thanks to Steph Thomas. Like I said, links are in the bio to all of his social channels, to the app, to his website, to everything. Please do connect with the guy. Genuinely a top bloke, and I'm really proud to call him a friend. So thank you very much for coming on, Steph, and I look forward to seeing you guys. Next up, we have Kate Holmes all the way from Las Vegas. So this is going to be an amazing show to follow on from today's as well. So thank you very much, guys, and we'll see you soon. Take care. Cheers. Bye. Bye.